Kushala, thank you so much for joining me. I love it when I get a chance to speak with my writer colleagues because, we work with each other day to day. We're slacking each other,
Yeah.
but we don't really get to see how each other ticks very much. So, this is going to be a great opportunity to have this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me, Laura.
You're very welcome. So, why don't you give us a quick intro on who you are and what you do?
So, I am the industry leader for CPG for Writer. What that means is I run the CPG business for Writer. I have about close to 20 years of background with CPG. I started off as a research engineer for one of the top research organizations in Stockholm, Sweden. But I really found my passion in business transformation. Procter& Gamble gave me the opportunity to be the leader in the business transformation. Then I spent over a decade with that company, learned a ton, worked with some incredible teams. Then I became the global transformation leader for Coca-Cola. Again, great brand, great people, fantastic time. Then moved on and worked for Amazon Private Brands as well as two other tech companies before I started with Writer. So yeah, so that's a little bit about my background, about 2 decades of experience in CPG. I'm hoping to bring those expertise to Writer.
And that is a wealth of experience. First of all, let's take a step back. What about CPG? And also, let's clarify what CPG means for anybody who isn't in the know. What about it made you just light up and say, this is where my career is leading me?
Yeah, CPG stands for consumer packaged goods. Anything that we use day to day, day in, day out. So I can bet that you used a CPG brand in the past 10 minutes. So the brands that ingrained into the society, into our lives. Really, the reason CPG clicked me was we always say CPG organizations are full organizations. What I meant by that is consider a brand like Procter& Gamble or consider Tide. You do the research to make Tide product. You create the product in a manufacturing supply chain environment. You market it. You sell it. In a CPG organization, you literally have all the functions. I mean, this is what is great about the CPG companies, the scale of the companies. And another thing that I am so interested in CPG companies is how we serve the consumers. So, Laura, now think about it, right? I mean, we as consumers, we change. Our preferences change. If you consider a market, it's not homogeneous. The market also has so many differences, and that is the beauty about this world. Now, the CPG companies are the only companies that actually serving those consumers. So really keep up with those consumers, understanding what they are looking for, understand their personal needs. That is such a complicated thing, and it's a never dull moment with CPG companies when you really think about it, right? So this aspect of how we serve consumers and how we serve consumers well really was my spark. So that's driving me to really work in the field. And when I speak to our customers at Writer, I think about the consumers every day and how I can help them. So it has become a part of me, I would assume.
When AI emerged onto the scene, was that something new to you? Were you already working in the AI space with CPG? And when I say when it emerged onto the scene, I mean I think we could all take the D day for that was November 2022, right? That's when ChatGPT kind of emerged into the public consciousness. So take me through that.
Yeah, so we called it different names. But the concepts of AI has been there in the CPG companies way before 2022. Research organizations do all kinds of modeling, all kinds of statistical analysis, and all kinds of things. I mean, those days we used to say machine learning. So there are different aspects of AI was really happening within the CPG industry. So I can tell you from my personal experience, my very first full AI project was when I was at Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola has this machine called freestyle machine. I don't know if you're familiar with that machine. Essentially, you go and you pick. I mean, the kids go nuts with it, right? So Coca-Cola is actually used these freestyle machines to identify the next flavors. So my organization was part of this process of really discovering the different flavors that we need to go after. So what we saw was in some localities, consumers are picking some things. I mean, some people combining Coca-Cola with Fanta. I don't know who would do that, but let's let's go with that. But what we saw was repeatability. One of the great examples that I can give you is that we saw people combine ice cream flavor with lemonade with dash of strawberry. I mean, that became such a important flavor for the company. So when you really think about it, the companies were really applying these types of techniques. I mean, you have so many different permutations, but how do you identify the right flavor? So that was my very first run in with AI, but we were doing these types of things. But as you rightly said, the greater, broader adoption came along in 2022. I am speaking with the customers, and it is actually going at I mean, it's going at warp speed. I was literally talking to some of the customers yesterday. I mean, it's just unbelievable, the speed and the adoption that we see in the market.
First of all, that's a bit of a revelation for me as a consumer and a fan of the freestyle machines, that this is not just delivering a service, but it's gathering data. That is mind blowing to me. Of course they are. I mean, we do it in social media all the time, right? The social media platforms are gathering our consumer information and our behavior. So it makes sense. But I just never thought about it as like when I interact with that physical machine at the movie theater or at Five Guys, that my preferences are being recorded and noted as data. That's brilliant and cool. Talk to me about some of the big trends that are impacting the CPG industry today that make AI incredibly critical for adoption.
So when you think about the CPG industry, there are three big areas that I see. I speak with our customers also in my past experience. These were the areas that we were after. So there are three things. So let me start talking the three areas. The first area that we see is the personalization. How do you drive personalization at scale? Now, the second big area, Laura, what we see is 15 years ago, you have brick and mortar. That is where you shop. Then e-commerce came along. Today, there are so many different channels consumers shop, or the commerce related things, or the brick and mortar, the e-commerce. And even e-commerce, you have many different options. So how do you play in these ecosystems and play to win? It's a big area for generative AI especially. So that is the second area that we see. Now, the third area that we see is generative AI really driving efficiencies. And CPG companies sometimes have a very thin margins. So how do you drive efficiencies in the overall system? Not just from one area. These efficiencies run through marketing to sales to R&D to product. I never thought that I would see product supply will have such an important aspect in terms of driving efficiencies. But these are the areas that we see. How do you drive personalization at scale? How do you use all the different types of channels so that you optimize the way that you go to the consumers? And then how do you drive efficiencies in your broader ecosystem? So, yeah, I mean, this is an exciting time to be in this space.
What are the leaders in the industry saying publicly to investors or employees about how they feel about AI and how they're thinking about AI?
There is not a single company that I met, I interacted with in my network is not taking AI seriously. There have been different tech trends that people talked about, but this is very different. You see the AI, you see how organizations are talking about, and there are a couple of contributing factors to this. First is if you are a CPG company, large or small, and if you are not really adopting the AI, then your customers are going to. I mean, either you don't want to change or not, doesn't matter. Your customers are going to adopt it. Think about it. I mean, everything that we do, we use these kinds of tools. Your suppliers are changing because they want to drive their efficiencies, they want to increase their revenue. Your other parties, the partners that you are involved with, are also adapting. So if you wanted to be left alone, then you can just forget about it and say, you know what, it's not for me. I'm risk averse. But I have not seen a single company doing that. There have been instances in my career I have seen leaders talk about it, but deep down, we don't do anything. But generative AI, it's not that. I mean, lines of business is really calling up the CIOs and asking, okay, can we do this? Can we do that? So there's no way to wait and say, okay, so it's a waiting game. We are just going to see the dust settles. We don't see it. I'm really encouraged to see how the leaders are really picking this up and then working with the partners, working with their customers to adopt it.
Can you share a story or an example of a collaboration with a CPG brand that has impacted your work and how you're approaching it and what you've learned from it?
So one of the companies, it's a food and beverage company that we work with. So they came up with this idea of how can they understand the consumer sentiments. This is a really high end case where you need to work with the consumers, understand their sentiments, synthesize it, then do that at a scale that you can statistically say this is important or this is not important, the trends. So this company was a little skeptical in terms of doing this, using generative AI for it. So they were asking us, okay, can we do this? Can we do not do that? We signed up and we delivered a capability so that they could do this consumer synthesis and consumer research at a fraction of a cost and taking days as opposed to weeks. This is incredibly powerful because how you can use generative AI has changed drastically. Earlier, it was more like a chatbots, help agents, so on. But now, generative AI is delivering ways that you really fundamentally transform the organizations. So I was surprised because the insight that we were able to come out with was actually better than traditional agency that they used before to get this information. So it is incredibly powerful. What I would say is that there are so many different ways that you can use the capability. It's the electricity, new electricity. It's how you use the electricity. I am really excited that we can be part of this journey and we can really set the vision and we can help the leaders realize their vision through that.
Back when I first started at Writer and people were really talking about these end-to-end solutions, it really was about thinking about it like the Industrial Revolution and adopting electricity and rewiring your factories with electricity. Is there something unique about CPG that makes it either more challenging or easier to rewire with AI?
Most of the CPG companies, the big ones, they're 100 years old. P&G, close to 200. So these organizations are successful because that they have great processes. What we are so encouraged by is that, I mean, I would have expected such a resilience in terms of, no, we do not want such a pushback. But what we are seeing is it's completely the other way around. CPG companies also facing challenges from niche brands. So if you are a major beauty brand, now your Rihanna's brand is up and coming. So you have celebrity brands coming. So what you are seeing is CPG companies are also trying to safeguard their turf. Now, the way that they safeguard their turf is really adopting these new capabilities. If they don't, they understand that they are going to be the losers out of it. Again, all companies are not the same and all functions are not the same. For right reasons, companies are they wanted to be cautious. They wanted to be secure. I mean, that is why what we are excited about, right? Because what we are providing is not really using the corporate data to train and so on. So there are a lot of things corporations are looking at and they wanted to safeguard. But what we are seeing is that when they hear that any partner has the right functions, right processes, they are more excited to move forward quickly.
So let's say that a CPG company is like on board, they are ready to get started. What are the big hurdles that they should anticipate as they start this journey, and how can they be ready to start it?
Yeah, it's such a great question. So there has been some evolution in terms of the generative AI use. As you said, in 2022, all companies saw it and people started using it for their personal use. writing email, some simple things. Now, they brought that enthusiasm to their officers and they started creating these applications and small things, chat applications and all that. But now, what we see is the days of proof of concepts are done. Most of the customers that I speak to day in, day out, they have done many proof of concepts. Some of the proof of concepts are great and some of the proof of concepts are not great. But now what they are looking for is replicability across the organization. How can I just have this capability and drive ROI? Any conversation that we have with an executive really starts with ROI, with writer. So that I know. And they also looking for, is it corporate ready? Because you can use a point solution or you can bring something along and then you can stitch something together to deliver something, but then that is not scalable. CPG companies, I mean, you're talking about reaching billion people, so the CPG companies need scale, so they are looking for that scalability. So there are a couple of things that the organizations are looking for, but mainly I would say after the POC stage is done, they are looking for a capability that is secure, that is replicable, and that is cost effective to drive business value to the entire organization, not to the pockets.
When we're talking about point solutions, can you give a specific example of a point solution versus something that is more replicable?
A point solution could be a solution that collects information and scrape the web and then provide you search engine optimization or create content for a particular need. That is a point solution. Now, the beauty about the way the market is thinking or our customers are thinking is, let's bring a platform that can power many workflows. It can be creating the SEO optimization, it could be creating content, or it could be synthesizing the consumer sentiments. So it could be a broad variety of things. So that's why what we see, the market is not really have an appetite for point solutions. POC days, companies were looking at point solutions, yes, because they wanted to drive value and they wanted to get it done quickly. But now that they understand there's a humongous value, they wanted to bring more the corporate speak or the corporate scale into the mix. So that is where I see the market is moving. And that is where I think a lot of CPG companies will make their big bets.
You've had conversations with some major, just household brands.
Hmm.
And without, again, naming names, I'd love to hear an example of a conversation that you've had where they've come in with very different expectations and have left with a different mindset.
Funny that you asked that question. Yesterday, just yesterday, I had a conversation with some C-level officers of a large CPG company. It's in the top five. Incredible enough, what they said was they saw our vision of really generating this orchestration across the different things. The reality is, Laura, that not a single vendor is going to be the only vendor a company would use. You would have all the hyperscalers, you would have the ERP solutions. So a corporation is not going to tie to a single vendor. So our vision about how do we create interoperability around the agents, how do we create this orchestration layer so that different organizations can connect into the power of generative AI. The CIO pretty much said that she has not heard that from any other company. I mean, that was such a great sentiment from the work that we do, the tech that we have, and also, obviously, me talks about it all the time. So I think that they pretty much came to hear a generative AI story from a high-end company, right? I mean, Writer is a known entity now. But what they heard was industry-defining vision. And the beauty about this is we agree that we don't have everything. So, for example, she said, look, some of the things we don't know, and you might also not know, but we will figure it out. So, if you bring the right vision and if you bring the right technology and if you bring the right architecture, the things that needs to be figured out can be figured out. And that is what we are seeing.
Is there a narrative or a misperception out there that you come up against a lot?
Yeah, I do. The biggest one that I hear is that, oh, generative AI, where's the ROI? I hear that all the time. I empathize with that narrative too, because if you are using a do it yourself kind of a capability, and if you are building things of your own in your pockets, it's very difficult to justify the return on investment. But with Rider, again, we lean in with the revenue. We talk about some of the executions that we have done with our customers. And I think that is a good way of really showcasing this. We know that some of the executions that we have, we can quantify and say, this is the revenue that generative AI can bring in. But if you are doing proof of concepts in pockets, you might not have that level of visibility. So we are very intentional about it. So for example, I think that anybody who's doing in this space, it is important to create value calculators. Depending on how you use it, depending on how your consumers are responding to it, depending on how your customers are responding to it, what is kind of the ROI. So we have a process of really creating that. So then it's about negotiating in terms of, oh no, these assumptions are not right, it's not 10%, it's 15%. So you can have that conversation. So the way I lead my organization is that really focusing on what is the return on investment. So I hear that, okay, so where is the ROI discussion? But the minute that we show them, okay, so these are the building blocks and these are the assumptions, please challenge us with in terms of our assumptions, that misconception throws out of the window.
So, as a content leader, one of my big resources with our industry leads is the solution map. And I know that you discuss these all the time. I'm curious what you see as the most exciting bits of that solution map, and also what you think are like, okay, this is foundational. If you're going to be starting in AI as a CPG company, this is something that's just table stakes.
The solution maps or workflow maps, in my case, I call them. Workflow maps means that it's end to end. We are talking about not a use case, but bunch of use cases, end to end delivering a defined business value. The workflow maps are directional. That starts the thought process. Now, another thing that we do is that I think that it's important to mention that we are bringing a building blocks. So I always try to say it's a sack of Lego blocks. Now, this stack of Lego blocks will help you to create your own workflows. Now, I work for these large CPG companies. Not a single CPG company would say, oh, my process is common across all CPG companies. Nobody would say. Oh, everyone would say, oh, I'm special. I have a different process. True, but maybe 80% of it is common. So our goal is to really build that 80% and then show it to the customer and say, okay, this is your starting point. Now, what are the other building blocks that you can add? And I think that this particular message is resonating really well. I'll tell you one great example. Accounts payable in a large CPG company is such a complicated manual process. You might be working with thousands of invoices a day. I mean, you get that many. But today, some companies, they have manual intervention. I mean, some people would go through it, checks it, making sure there's no fraud, there's no overpayment. So this entire process, we have automated it. Now, a company can come and say, oh, our accounts payable process have other checks and balances. Okay, fine enough, right? So then we add those things. So that is kind of where I see the solution maps play in. Solution maps will give the direction. It's a conversation starter, I should say. Once you have the conversation, then you get in and you understand the process, and then you add additional things that are not already built within our Lego blocks.
When I hear that with this account solution, what distinguishes it from SaaS, right? What distinguishes AI, an AI solution, or an AI agent from a SaaS solution?
Such an interesting question. I just had this exact discussion yesterday. So, Laura, I've been in this business for quite some time. When I started, remember I told you about that accounts payable process? That particular process would have taken me about a year and maybe a quarter, at least 15 months from start to finish to develop it, test it, deploy. When SaaS came along, it was such a revelation. Oh my God, now we have the objects. Now we can build these things in 6 months. Guess what? How long it took for us to create that within Writer? 3 days. But imagine 15 months to 3 days. I mean, I was talking to a CIO yesterday. he doesn't believe that this can be any faster. But we don't know because the market is moving at that fast pace. So if you ask the question about the SaaS to agents, the speed that you can change your workflows and build your workflows, there has nothing done like this. I feel this is an inflection point in the market. Number one. Number two, the cost structure is also going to change because SaaS has a very different cost structure, whereas the agents have a different cost structure. I think overall, when the dust settles, market will realize or market will come to the point that agentic will provide faster solutions, faster to the market, but also cheaper to build and operate. Because in order to operate an agent, it's not the complications that you have in a SaaS system. So I see that enterprises are adopting it because the speed to market and the cost to the company.
Where do you see this all going next? And what role do you see yourself playing in that evolution?
Yeah, and so actually, this is something that industry is talking about, and also the leadership of Writer also talked about it. Now, Alora, we create these processes. So, for example, let's say for sales process of CPG, we define a brand new workflow. We create capabilities around it, but we still create it. And there are some loops to understand what are the misses, what are the successes. Where the market is going is these are all going to be self-evolving. So imagine you create a process today and the process collects the information, provide the business outcomes, and another agent or another process understand the business outcomes and the inputs that we put, and it's self-correct and self-optimize. So it is going to become corporations can transform their workflows and they will truly become autonomous workflows. That is the beauty that we see. I think that is where the market is going. Self-evolving workflows, again self-evolving models, also the self-evolving workflows that the business will have to really provide governance. Business will have to understand the transparency, how this information is captured, but the enterprises will do more the governance role as opposed to the processes are self-evolving.
You, Kushala, how have you been changing? How are these conversations shape you and help you evolve?
I always tell this to my kids. This is the most interesting time in my professional career. As I started the conversation, I love CPG. I mean, I love serving consumers. I know the intricacies of it. I know the complexities of it. But to really drive the change of the CPGs from generative AI standpoint, I couldn't have asked for more. I learn so much from my team. I learn so much from the work that we do. I learn so much from what others do. I'm a very intellectually curious person. I would love to learn. I read things up on Saturdays. So to me, there's not enough time to learn what is coming out. Every day there is something out there. And what we are hearing from our customers is also fantastic. They are thinking workflows that we have not thought of, to be honest. So they are coming up with ideas, say, hey, can we do this? Can we do that? So this excitement of how our customers embracing it and how the market is evolving really keep me young and keep me excited.
I know we've talked about the sentiment analysis and the accounting use cases. Are there any other use cases that just light you up that you're like, this is just brilliant?
We are talking to a customer where we are looking at touchless sourcing, meaning when you have contract negotiation, it is a complicated process. You get the contract, somebody needs to read the contract, then you look into the numbers, you go back and forth. We are working with a customer to transform this entire process, which is mind boggling to me because you do not need somebody to have a call, set up a call, discuss the numbers. No, you don't need to do that. You can do all that through emails. And AI is really powering that. We are working with some other companies to look into the shelf space. Okay, so we only have this 10% of the shelf share, but in terms of sales, we are 15%. We need to increase our shelf share. So we have these conversations about workflows that we have never thought before. If I were in the SaaS environment or if I were in a traditional development environment, these are the things that we would never touch. But these were the things that we see. So within Writer for CPG, we have identified workflows across 4 different areas: marketing and brand building, sales execution, product supply, research and development, and other administrative functions. We are getting so many different workflows, suggestions from our partners, our customers. I mean, there is no shortage of workflows that we can transform.
As we wrap up here, what advice would you give yourself way back in the day before you even embarked on this journey toward AI and CPG?
Embrace the change, and it's going to move in a neck breaking speed. I thought, middle of my career, that we were in a technologies, we were doing things so fast. But the rate of change happening here is unbelievable. Also, I would love to tell some of our prospects, some of our customers, people who are interested in this particular space, don't wait until the right moment, or don't wait until you find the right use case. The way that we are seeing successful customers build is they start somewhere. They find a partner, a trusted partner that have the right technology, and work with the partner to really get that journey. Because again, the beauty that I'm really encouraged with Writer is that it's not just a tech provider. We really help our customers. We are partners. So I would give myself the advice that I am today at the most accelerating time in my career, as I said before. Not because the things are moving just fast, but the excitement that I see in the market, the things that we can do today, and the potential for tomorrow. Just too exciting to be too excited about.
Is there anything that we didn't cover that you want to address with me?
I mean, not so much, but as I said, the great use cases or the great workflows that we see is when you build with your partners, with your customers coming together. So, as I said before, don't wait until the right moment. Sometimes I see some companies or some organizations, they have 300 use cases and they are in the process of really prioritization. But the ones that we see reach the value the fastest, they find the ones that they want to work, find the right partners, get the partners' help, work collaboratively and build. So that is the thing that I would love to give back to the community.
Thank you so much, Kushala.
Thank you so much for taking the time. It was fun.
Yeah, this was a pleasure.